Question 6 about forces. Part A, which of these quantities is a scalar? So a scalar is a quantity that does not have direction. The opposite of that is a vector, which does have direction. So of these four, acceleration does have direction because you need to specify which direction it's moving in to give the full information. Energy does not, that wouldn't make any sense. Force definitely does. We definitely need to draw it with an arrow so we know it must be a vector. And velocity is the vector version of speed. So speed would be a scalar, but velocity is with a direction. So your answer is B, energy. Okay, so for part B, the diagram shows the horizontal forces acting on a van. You've got 800 newtons forwards, but only 1250 newtons backwards. So the forces are unbalanced. Calculate the resultant horizontal force. So 8,000 forwards minus 1250 backwards gives you 6750 newtons. State the equation linking resultant force, mass and acceleration. So resultant force equals mass times acceleration. So F equals ma. Write it out in words. These are the only acceptable symbols. The mass of the van is 2,500 kilograms. There's nothing tricky here. Calculate the acceleration of the van and give the unit. So you need to rearrange F equals ma, which is Newton's second law. So we're going to do force divided by mass. It's your resultant force, so it's the 6750, and your mass is 2,500, and that should give you an answer of 2.7. So 1 mark for substituting everything correctly, 2nd mark for your answer, and 3rd mark is meters per second squared. Right, we've got a velocity time graph for the van. So at the beginning, obviously the velocity is increasing, so this part of the graph it's accelerating all the way up to 50 seconds. But you can see that the acceleration is not constant. So on a velocity time graph, the gradient is the acceleration. This part of the graph here, the acceleration is pretty constant because you can tell that because it's a straight line. But after about 15-16 seconds, the acceleration starts to decrease. And the reason you can tell that is because the graph is getting less and less steep, until eventually, after 50 seconds, it's now going at a constant velocity. So from 50 to 80 seconds, the forces must be balanced because the van is not accelerating any longer. So basically that's explaining the shape of the graph. And it has to be explained, so you need to not only state what the graph's doing, but state why. So from 0 to about 16 seconds, it's got its maximum acceleration. So that means that the forces are unbalanced forwards. It's got the maximum resultant force forwards. You get 1 mark for saying that it's accelerating all the way up to 50 seconds. The 2nd mark is that means there must be a resultant force to the right. 3rd possible mark is that as it accelerates, as the speed increases, the air resistance will also increase. So we can see that if we look back at the original picture. So as the van gets faster, as the speed increases, this force here, this air resistance and friction, is going to increase, until eventually it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger until it will reach 8,000 newtons. Then the forces will be balanced, then it will go at a constant speed. Okay. I've talked through a lot of those marks, so let me tell you exactly what you can get the marks for. Okay, so 1 is for realising that between 0 and 50 seconds there's a resultant force forwards. And that means that it's accelerating. So between 0 and 50 seconds it's accelerating. And 3rd possible mark you could get is that air resistance increases as the speed increases. 4th possible mark is that linking this in, so if your air resistance is increasing, your resultant force is going to decrease, so your acceleration decreases. And you can see that from the graph because the gradient gets less steep. 5th possible mark is eventually your air resistance is going to equal your engine force, your driving force. and so the forces will be balanced, and your resultant force will then equal 0. And a 7th mark can then be that if your resultant force is 0, your acceleration is 0. And you only really need 5 of those 7 marks, so it should be reasonably easy to get 5 out of those 7.